Alright, now, today we are focused on Frieza. Now, I'm skipping to Frieza because I know some people are probably wondering why I'm not covering any of the other characters. The Ginyu Force, the Dorian Zarbon. So, you know what? Just for the hay, but I'll give you a quick rundown of them, too. You got, let's see here, who all showed up? You got Kui, who showed up, was apparently Vegeta's rival. Um, One of the strongest members of Frieza's regular army, apparently had about the same level of strength as Vegeta, often mocked him and his entire race, yada yada. Vegeta kills him. I mean, you know, there's not a whole lot of background for him. Same for the Doria and Zarbon. I mean, you know that they're Frieza's, top lieutenants and everything, and you know that the Doria is the one that he sent to kill Bardock. You know that Zarbon's pretty much his chief advisor, and despite being stronger of the two, because he abhors transforming, he is, whatever. He keeps himself back, so to speak, from combat most of the time. When he transforms, he turns into a freak. He's the one who let it slip to Vegeta that Frieza can also increase his power in a similar manner, so there you go. And Doria is the one who tells Vegeta the truth that Frieza was the one who destroyed his homeworld. And that's about the extent of them. The Ginyus, they're all just pretty much crazy. Raccoon's a thug. Berta and Jace are essentially partners. Gulda was a little time-stopping freak that gets his head blown off. I mean, I don't know how deep I can really get, Captain Ginyu was the leader, possibly, possibly crazier than the rest of them, depending. Could switch bodies, so nobody even really knows what his original body looked like. That's about it. Now, the reason, though, that I want to focus on Frieza is Frieza's got such an interesting dynamic. Even if you... A lot of people, when they talk about Frieza, though, for some reason, they try to keep Cooler in there, and while I do like Cooler, and while Cooler, if I recall correctly, was actually drawn potentially to be in the series, he wasn't used, and so they used him in a movie instead, basically. That could be wrong, it could be a rumor. I still have yet to be able to fully confirm that, so whatever. But, so many people try to keep that in there. He's technically not canon, though, so even if maybe he was intended to be at one time, I don't see the point to keep him in there. And really, the dynamic of Frieza is still interesting, whether he's an only child or not. So, but Frieza, to understand him, Frieza's apparently... Well, it's really hard to say how old Frieza is. We don't really know how old their race is. We don't know for sure, necessarily, was Frieza really young when he wiped out the Saiyans? Was it a youthful thing? Was it a hasty decision? Do they just age so much slower that it's, like, really no difference in age? Hard to say. But we do know that Frieza has spent years basically stampeding and rampaging across the galaxy. He and his family have an empire set up. He apparently has free reign. He's able to go through and do whatever he needs to do. Technically, he's not the ruler. His father is, but he likes to parade himself around as being the absolute ruler, and his dad does pretty much give him free reign, so, he pretty much is. He is not afraid to completely obliterate a planet if they won't fall in line, and it can't be conquered. He's not above doing whatever it takes to, cripple any opposition. Takes great pride in the fact that he considers himself invincible. Now, it's interesting because Frieza, for all his power, and it's implied that these guys learned how to transform simply to keep their power more controllable so they can better manage things. Despite all his power, he's never really had a reason to shift out of his first, or arguably most heavily camouflaged or whatever form. Um, Apparently, he has a couple times gone into his second, which also implies that he can go back, contrary to what some people believe. But apparently, the third form, no one had ever actually seen him take in combat. So he's only ever faced anyone that could take him to the second and third form, which could explain why he was getting so. See, Frieza, when he starts out, he's extremely calm. Even when he's forced to go into a second form, he's still relatively calm. He's a bit more brutal, but he's still pretty calm. But but if you notice, when he goes into his third form onward, he's a lot more sadistic. He's a lot more angry. He's a lot more. Even though he's calmer, you can just tell that he's pretty much angry that he even got pushed to this point. Did he relish in the fact that he was going to absolutely terrify them and basically show them hell, as he said? Yes. But at the same time, it's pretty embarrassing for him that he even had to get pushed that far. This guy essentially ruled the entire galaxy, or at least a huge chunk of it. And the parts they didn't rule, he could pirate and pillage, and he was definitely feared. I mean, even the Kais had heard of him, and weren't exactly not sweating the guy. He was extremely powerful. He was extremely dangerous. And when he came up against an enemy that forced him to transform like that forced him into the higher levels of power, especially when they were, Saiyans and beings from a planet that was pretty much not where it spit originally, it upset him. When he found out that Vegeta was planning to betray him by going after those Dragon Balls, it upset him. And then he happened to hear about the legend of the Namekian Dragon Balls, and he figures he's going to go after them himself. Yes, people. So many people seem to think that he only, that Vegeta was somehow some kind of victim of Frieza's because of that stupid dub thing. That ain't the case. He was planning to betray him long before he even found out that Frieza destroyed his planet and essentially, supposedly, went back on his word and killed them all anyway. Even though he told them before that, oh god. Anyway, don't even get me started with that, the mess that made there. But, yeah, honestly, Frieza, it's a very interesting dynamic he has with Goku and Vegeta, simply because he's the one who completely destroyed their planet, destroyed their people, wiped them all out, almost completely wiped out the Namekian race, which is Piccolo's beef with him, invaded his home, started slaughtering his people that he had pretty much just rediscovered, just learned that he had. And then he also inherited Nail's rage after he merged with him, knowing everything that Frieza had done to their people. And then you have, you got Piccolo's perspective. Piccolo basically knows what Frieza did. Vegeta also knows what Frieza did and had an attachment to that culture. Goku, though, the irony is that Goku basically had to fight for the honor of these two races who he had never really had a chance to meet. Who, in the case of his own race, he wasn't even really a part of, familiar with. But he basically had to, for their sake and in their name, take on Frieza. So that right there is actually kind of interesting. He's basically having to fight for people that he really knew nothing about, other than the fact that they were, well, in essence, evil. But, still, to wipe out the entire race just on a whim. Stab them in the back when they were faithfully serving you, that's, something that's pretty low. And when you factor that in, and the fact that he's got to go up against Goku, who, he actually has to start dipping into his power to take on, you slowly see Frieza kind of start to crack. He starts getting more irritable, he starts getting more vicious, he starts getting more, impertinent. He cannot believe the audacity of these people to actually challenge him, let alone the fact that they're this strong and actually able to challenge him. And when he gets hit by that spirit bomb, especially the first time he's actually able to feel real pain, it just pushed him over the edge. He basically determined at that point he was going to kill them all one by one, and he was too. That was his full intention. And then to get confronted with the one thing, the very reason that he had wiped out the Saiyans in the first place. See, the thing about Frieza is when he wiped out the Saiyans, he did it out of a fear. He noticed that they were all getting stronger. Each successive generation was born stronger than the last. And they were getting stronger. And they were getting stronger. And they were going on these missions that should have been suicide missions, and yet entire teams were surviving. And it was frightening him. Because, while he didn't consider himself to be superstitious and believe in that legend, he couldn't ignore the fact that the Saiyans were in fact getting stronger as a whole. I mean, even the low-ranking people were coming back more and more. And the truth of the matter is that 1,000 years, or whatever, since the last Super Saiyan was supposed to be coming close. You know, the Super Saiyan legend was supposed to be approaching the time when it was supposed to take place. And, so basically, yes, out of fear and figuring they were expendable, he just wiped them all out. And then it turns out that the one that got away on that little pod, I mean, that's half the reason, believe it or not, that he took Vegeta. He was the one who was supposedly going to be that Super Saiyan. It was sort of his little prize that he made certain it wouldn't happen, and then Vegeta was the one who was supposedly, or at least indicated that he should have been the Super Saiyan. I mean, the Super Saiyans were always of the royal line. Vegeta was so young and yet so incredibly powerful compared to, say in history and record. So yes, he killed them all and took the one that was supposed to be it, and that was his trophy, that was his prize, that was his pet. And he did treat him well, comparatively. And yet Vegeta still stabbed him in the back. So that threw him into a rage in and of itself. But the fact of the matter is, the one that he let get away, the one that slipped by that tiny little pod with that little baby that registered almost no power whatsoever, is the one that came back and turned out to be his worst nightmare. And it terrified him. It shook him. It broke him. It busted his rage bubble like you wouldn't believe. By the end of that fight, Frieza is literally just flailing wildly, screaming, trying to hit him, trying to beat him, trying to prove that he is still stronger, and in the process destroys himself. And then, of course, later on, when his father finds him, Daddy, who it turns out is even stronger than him, finds him and rebuilds him, and Frieza figures he's going to have an easy time of it until he finds another Super Saiyan, which also kind of frees him out. And when he determines to destroy the entire planet just to get rid of it, and this time actually do it, he is shocked to find out that, that ain't gonna happen. And he ends up butchered as a result. The thing about Frieza is that there's just so much irony in that, in setting out to stop the one thing that he actually feared, he himself made it happen. And that right there is just extremely ironic. The role he played in his own demise is just wow. But Frieza, though, awesome character, I have to admit. The spine-chillingly evil, very ironic destiny, so to speak. Well, very ironic. And all in all, he's actually a pretty dang good villain. So, next time we're going to be focusing on, let's see, I'm not going to do Garlic Jr. because he's filler, even though I really do like that saga, but, it's a filler saga. I'm sticking to mostly the actual canon here, so we're going to go to androids 19 and 20 next, and it'll probably be a shorter one because I want to do 16, 17, and 18 separate too. I don't want to try to lump all the androids together because then I probably run over time. So, 19 and 20 will probably be coming next, and then 16, 17, and 18, then sell, and we'll move from there. Alright guys, see ya.